Welcome to At the Table,
where we are connecting entrepreneurs, discovering missions, and building communities with purpose, body, soul, mind, and business with
Charlie
and Heather with Free Time Solutions.
Good morning. Welcome to the weekly reading. I'm Charlie, your host, and together we are on an adventure of personal growth and business growth. And we do that a few ways. We start the week on Sundays with our weekly reading, where I read a chapter of each of the books we're reading, which right now are The Voice of Knowledge by Don Miguel Ruiz and Career Self-Care by Minda Zetlin. The goal is to do a little bit of personal growth and a little bit of business growth, and these things cross over all the time, which is really, really cool. And then the next thing that we do is Mindset Monday, where me and Heather talk about what we learned reading the books and how it pertains to our lives, and maybe that'll inspire you to invite these topics into your life too. And then we wrap out the week with an interview on Fridays with a local business. On occasion, it's Heather and I talking about what we do for work. I am the CEO of Free Time Solutions, a media networking company. And we are here to help you out. All right, let's do this. Starting off this week with The Voice of Knowledge by Don Miguel Ruiz. And we are on chapter 5 this week, The Storyteller. Exploring the characters in the story. That night in the desert is what I call my return to common sense. I had been living in a story of my own creation my entire life without even noticing it. Once I had this awareness, I started to question everything in my story. Is it true that I am what I believe I am? Is what I believe about everybody else true? I reviewed the story of my life, and I didn't like all the drama that I had created. I wanted to reinvent myself. The first step to take away from my story what I felt was not true and to find out what was true, I discovered that what I call the frame of the dream is true because our creator creates the frame, and it's the same for everybody. Our agreements about what to call the objects in the frame are also true because this is how we describe our virtual reality. The letter A is an A because we say so and we agree. The word dog describes the type of animal that we agree to call a dog. Knowledge used in this way is just a tool for communication, but also everything that is abstract is a lie. What is right or wrong, what is good or bad, what is beautiful or ugly. I discovered that more than 90% of the concepts I had stored in my mind were based on lies, especially the concepts I believed about myself. I can do this. I cannot do that. I am this way. I will never be that way. The problem is not really knowledge. The problem is what contaminates knowledge, and that is the lie. I could see that there was a lot of nonsense in the way we learned to write our stories. How did this happen? Before I was born in this physical body, a whole society of storytellers was already there. The story was ongoing, and from their story, I learned how to create my own. The storytellers who are here before us teach us how to be human. First, they tell us what we are, boy or girl. Then they tell us who we are and who we shouldn't or shouldn't be. They teach us how to be a woman or how to be a man. They tell us to be a proper woman, a decent woman, a strong man, a brave man. They give us a name and identity and tell us the role that we are playing in their story. They prepare us to live in the human jungle, to compete with one another, to control one another, to impose our will, to fight against our own kind. Of course, I believed what the storytellers told me. Why would I not believe them? They filled me with knowledge, and I used that knowledge to copy their style and create my art in a similar way. I heard my older brothers sharing their strong opinions with my father. I tried to talk and they shut me up right away. Forget it, I had no voice. As I said before, I could hardly wait to have an opinion of my own. It didn't matter what the opinion was, I just wanted to impose my opinion and to defend my opinion with all of that self-righteousness. As children, we witness the way other people relate to one another, and this becomes normal behavior for us. We see our older sisters and brothers, our aunts and uncles, our parents and neighbors in romantic relationships. They suffer, but they believe they love. We see them fight and we can't wait to grow up and do the same thing. The mentality when we are children is, wow, that looks like fun. All of the drama we suffer in our relationships is because we witness so many lies when we are innocent, and we use those lies to form our own story. I continued to study the story of my life, and what I discovered is that everything in my story is about me. Of course, it has to be that way because I am the center of my perception, and the story is from my point of view. The main character who lives in my story is based on someone who really exists. That is true. But what I believe about me is not true. It's a story. I create the character of Miguel, and it's just an image based on what I agree to believe about myself. I project my image to other people in society, and other people perceive that projection, modify it, and react to me according to their stories. Then I discover that because it's my story, I also create an image for every secondary character who lives in my story. The secondary characters are based on people who really exist, but everything I believe about them is a story of my own creation. I create the character of my mother, the character of my father, the character of each of my brothers and sisters and friends, my beloved, even my dog and my cat. I meet a person, I qualify the person, I make judgments about the person based on all of the knowledge of my mind. This is how I keep their image in my memory. In my story, you are a secondary character who is my creation, and I interact with you. You project what you want me to believe about you, and I modify it depending on what I believe. Now, I am sure that you are what I believe you are. I might even say I know you, when the truth is that I don't know you at all. I only know the story I create about you, and it took some time for me to understand that I only know the story I create about myself. For years, I thought that I knew myself until I discovered that it was not the truth. I only knew what I believed about myself. Then I discovered that I am not what I believe I am. And that was very interesting and also very frightening when I discovered that I really don't know anybody and they don't know me either. The truth is that we only know what we know, and the only thing we really know is our story. But how many times have you heard people say, I know my children very well, they would never do something like that? Do you think that you really know your children? Do you think that you really know your partner? Well, you are probably certain about that your partner doesn't know you. You may be certain that nobody really knows you, but do you really know yourself? Do you really know anybody? I used to believe that I knew my mother, but the only thing I know about her is the role I assign her to play in my story. I have an image for the character who plays the role of my mother. Everything I know about her is what I believe about her. I have no idea what she has in her head. Only my mother knows what she is, and surely she doesn't know either. The same is true for you. Your mother can swear that she knows you very well, but is it true? I don't think so. You know that she has no idea what you have in your mind. She only knows what she believes about you, which means she knows almost nothing. You are a secondary character in her story, and you play the role of the son or the daughter. Your mother creates an image of you, and she wants you to fit the image she creates. If you are not what she wants you to be according to her story, guess what happens? She feels hurt by you, and she tries to make you fit her image. That is why she feels the need to control you, to tell you what to do and what not to do, to give you all of her opinions about the way you should live your life. When you know that it's just her story, why bother defending your point of view? It doesn't matter what you say. She will not believe you anyway. How can she believe your story when it isn't her point of view? The best you can do is to change the conversation, enjoy her presence, and love her the way she is. When you have this awareness, you will forgive your mother for whatever she did to you, according to your story, of course. Just through the act of forgiveness, your relationship with your mother will change completely. Once I discovered that people are creating and living in their own story, how could I judge them any longer? How could I take anything personally when I know that I am only a secondary character in their story? I know that when they talk to me, they are really talking to the secondary character in their story. And whatever people say about me is just a projection of their image of me. It has nothing to do with me. I don't waste my time taking anything personally. I focus my attention on creating my own story. Each of us has the right to create our own life story, to express ourselves through our art, but how many times do we try to make the secondary characters in our story fit the images and roles we create for them? We want our children to be the way we want them to be. Well, bad news. That will never happen. And when our partner doesn't fit the image we create for him or her, we feel angry or hurt. Then we try to control our partner. We have to tell our partner what to do, what not to do, what to believe, what not to believe. We even tell our partner how to walk, how to dress, how to speak. We do the same thing with our children, and it becomes a war of control. Life in this physical body is very short, even if we live to be 100 years old. When I discovered this, I decided not to waste my time creating conflict, mainly with the people I love. I want to enjoy them, and I do that by loving them for who they are, not for what they believe. The story they create is not important. I don't care if my mother's story doesn't agree with my story. I love her and I enjoy her presence. I know not to impose my story on her. I don't impose my story on anybody. I respect her story, I listen to her story, and I don't make it wrong. If other people try to write your story, it means they don't respect you. They don't respect you because they consider that you are not a good artist, that you cannot write your own story, even though you were born to write your own story. Respect comes differently from love. It is one of the greatest expressions of love. I also respect myself, and I don't allow anybody to write my story. My story is my responsibility. It's my creation. I am the artist, and I respect my own art. I can I can compare my art with other people's art, but I make my own choices and I take responsibility for my creation. When I first had the awareness that I didn't like my story, I thought, okay, I am the author. I will change my story. And I tried and I failed and I tried again and I failed again many times because I was trying to change all of the secondary characters in my story. I thought that if I changed the secondary characters, I was changing my story, and that was not true at all. The problem is not with the secondary characters in our story. What we see in them is just a projection of what we believe, and that's a secondary problem. Our main problem is the main character of the story. If we don't like our story, it's because we don't like what we believe about the main character. There's only one way to change our story, and that is by changing what we believe about ourselves. This is a big step in awareness. If we clean up the lies that we believe about ourselves, almost like magic, the lies that we believe about everybody else will change. Then the secondary characters in our story will change. But this doesn't mean that we exchange one person for another person. The secondary characters stay the same. What changes is what we believe about them. This changes what we project onto them. And with that change, the interaction we have with them changes. And with that change, the way they perceive us changes. And with that change, the secondary character who we represent in the story changes. Just like a wave that ripples across the water, we judge ourselves and everything else changes. You are the only one who can change your story, and you do this by changing your relationship with yourself. Every time you change the main character in your story, Just like magic, the whole story starts to change in order to adapt to the new main character. This is easy to prove because the main character is changing anyway, but it's changing by itself without your awareness. The way you perceive the world when you are 8 or 9 years old is not the same way you perceive the world at 15 or 16. When you are in your early 20s, your perception changes again. You see the world differently when you are first married or when you have your first child. You change what you believe about yourself. Your point of view changes, the way you express yourself changes, and your reactions change. Everything changes, and the change can be so dramatic that it seems like two different James and two different people. You also change the secondary characters in your story. The way you see your father and your mother when you are 10 changes when you are 20 and 30 and 40, and it keeps changing. Every single day, you rewrite the story. As soon as you wake up in the morning, you have to find out what day it is. You have to find out where you are and where the story was before you went to sleep, just to keep going with the story with your life. You have to go to work, you have to do whatever activity you have planned for that day, and you keep writing your own story, but without awareness. Everything in your story is constantly changing, including the story you tell yourself about who you are. 20 years ago, the storyteller told you who you are and you believed it. Today, the storyteller is telling you another story about yourself, and it's completely different. Of course, the storyteller will say, "Oh, that's because I have more experience. Now I know more. Now I am wiser." It's just another story. Your whole life has been a story. If you talk about something that happened to you when you were a child, your father or mother or brother or sister will have a different story. This is because we only share the frame of the dream. If two of you start talking about something that happened 20 years ago, it may sound as if you are talking about two different events. Your father claims, "This is what happened. This is the truth." And you say, "No, no, no, you're wrong. This is what really happened." Who is right and who is wrong? Well, both of you are right according to your stories. If 100 people perceive the same event, you hear 100 different stories, and everybody claims that his or her story is the true story. Of course, it's only true for that person, and your story is only true for you, but the voice of knowledge starts searching for everything in your mind to make yourself right. You even look for allies from the outside to join you in your crusade to be right and to make the other person wrong. Why try to justify what you believe? You don't need to make others wrong because you already know that in their story they are right. In your story, you are right. Then being right or wrong is over, and you no longer have to defend what you believe. When we reach this level of awareness, it is easier not to take what other people say personally. We know that every human around us is a storyteller and that everyone distorts the truth. What we share with one another is just our perception. It is just our point of view, and it's completely normal. Because the only thing we have is our point of view. This is how we describe whatever we witness. Our point of view depends upon our programming, which is everything in our personal tree of knowledge. Our point of view also depends upon how we are feeling emotionally and physically and how it changes from one moment to the next. It changes when we are angry or upset, and it changes again when we are happy. Our perception changes when we are tired or hungry. We humans are constantly modifying what we say, how we react, what we project. We even modify what everybody else says. You know, the way we create our stories is very interesting. We have a tendency to distort everything we perceive to make it agree with what we already believe. We fix it to make it agree with our lies. It is amazing how we do this. We distort the image of our children, we distort the image of our partner, and we distort the image of our parents. We even distort the image of our dog or our cat. People come to me and say, "Oh, I have learned so much from my dog. My dog is almost human. He's almost talking now." And they really mean it. How many people take their dog to a pet psychologist because the dog has so many issues? Do you see how we distort our story? The story is based in reality because, yes, we have an emotional connection with our dog, but it's not true that our dog almost talks and that our dog is almost human. When we talk about our children, we say, my children are the best. They do this and they do that. Another person hearing this may say, no, look at mine. As artists with our own style, we have the right to distort our story, and this is the best we can do anyway. That distortion is our point of view, and for us, it has meaning. We project our story, and by seeing the distortion, we can sometimes turn to our own truth. Then who says that the distortion of our story is not art? It is art, and it is beautiful. Humans are the storytellers of God. There is something that exists inside all of us that can make an interpretation of everything we perceive. We are like God's journalists trying to explain whatever happens around us. It is our nature to make up stories, and this is why we create languages. This is why all of the world religions create beautiful mythology. We try to express what we perceive and share what we perceive, and this action is happening all the time. When we meet somebody new, we want to know that person's story almost right away. We ask all of the key questions. What do you do? Where do you live? How many children do you have? This interrogation goes both ways. We can hardly wait to tell that person our point of view, to express what we feel, to share our own story. When we experience something we like, we want to tell everybody about it. That's why we talk so much to one another. Even when we are by ourselves, we have the need to share our story, and we share it with ourselves. We see a beautiful sunset and we say, oh, what a beautiful sunset. Nobody is listening except us, but we talk to ourselves anyway. We also have the need to know other people's stories because we like to compare notes, or we can say that as artists, we like to compare our art. We see a movie, we like it, and we ask a friend who went with us, what did you think of the movie? Well, maybe our friend has another point of view and tells us things about the movie that we didn't see. Very soon, we change our mind and say, well, that movie was not as good as I thought it was. We are constantly exchanging information and modifying our story in this way. This is how the dream of humanity evolves. Our personal dream mixes with the dream of other dreamers, and this modifies the bigger dream of society. You are dreaming the story of your life, and I can assure you that it's an art. Your art is the art of creating stories and sharing stories. If I met you today, I would see the real you behind your story. I would see you as the force of life creating art through you. Your story could be the best screenplay for any movie because all of us are professional storytellers. But I know that whatever you tell me is just a story. I don't have to believe your story, but I can listen to your story and enjoy it. I can go to the movies to see The Godfather and I don't believe it, but I can enjoy it, right? What I'm sharing with you is my personal process about how I recovered my personal freedom. I am grateful for the opportunity to share my story, but it's just a story and it's only true for me. Something I find very interesting is that every time I share my story, this story, it is different. I tried to distort it as little as possible, but even my own story changes despite the distortion. If you can understand it, you can compare it in your own art. Many times we don't see our own creation. We don't see our own lies, but sometimes in the reflection of somebody else, we can see our own magnificence. By experiencing the love of another person, we can see how great we are. From one artist to another artist, we might see that it's possible to improve our own art. Once we have the awareness to see our own story, we discover there's another way of creating the main character. Without awareness, there's nothing we can do because the story is so powerful that the story writes itself. We create the story, we give our personal power to the story, and then the story is living our lives. But with awareness, we recover the control of our story. That is the good news. If we don't like our story, we are the authors. We can change it. Points to ponder. You are the author of an ongoing story you tell yourself. In your story, everything is about you and has to be that way because you are the center of your perception. This story is told from your point of view. You create an image for the secondary characters in your story and you assign them a role to play. The only thing you know about the secondary characters is the story you create about them. The truth is that you don't know anyone and nobody knows you either. Respect is one of the greatest expressions of love. If other people try to write your story, it means they don't respect you. They consider that you are not a good artist who can write your own story, even though you were born to write your own story. The only way to change your story is to change what you believe about yourself. If you clean up the lies you believe about yourself, the lies you believe about everybody else will change. Every time you change the main character of your story, the whole story changes to adapt to the new main character. Don't waste your time taking anything personally. When other people talk to you, they are really talking to the secondary character in their story. Whatever people say about you is just a projection of their image of you. It has nothing to do with you. Humans are storytellers of God. It is our nature to make up stories, to interpret everything we perceive. Without awareness, we give our personal power to the story, and the story writes itself. With awareness, we recover the control of our story. We see that we are the authors, and if we don't like our story, we change it. Chapter 18, Making Work Work for Parents. I recently read a Harvard Business Review piece by Stanford professor Nicholas Bloom titled, "Don't Let Employees Pick Their WFH, Work from Home Days." It was an odd opinion coming from Bloom, who is known as a work from home advocate. He famously conducted an experiment with 1,000 employees of Trip.com, a ginormous Chinese travel agency, and proved that those who worked remotely were more productive than their on-site colleagues. He even gave a TEDx talk about it. Now here he was arguing that unless your company is fully virtual and no one ever comes to the office, no employee should have the option to work from home 5 days a week. What changed his mind? A few things, but here's the biggest: motherhood. Bloom explained that his team at Stanford had surveyed 30,000 working age Americans since May 2020, asking them whether they would rather work in an office or at home. Most said they wanted to work in the office at least 1 day a week, but 32% said they wanted to work from home full-time, and a disproportionately high number of people who said that there were mothers with children at home. If mothers wanted to work remotely, why not just let them? This is a bad idea, according to Bloom, because his earlier research with the travel agency had shown what most of us intuitively know. If you're doing your job at home and you have colleagues doing the same job in the office, they're more likely to get promoted than you are. This is true even if you're working harder. The travel agents have studied were more productive than their peers, yet they were 50% less likely to get a promotion over the 21 months he tracked them. Put these two findings together and you've got an obvious problem, Bloom wrote. Single young men could all choose to come into the office 5 days a week and rocket up the firm, while employees with young children, particularly women, who choose to work from home for several days each week, are held back. This would be both a diversity loss and a legal time bomb for companies. According to Bloom, this obvious problem had an equally obvious solution. He advised the company leaders who read Harvard Business Review to set the same work from home rules for everyone, without taking their preferences into account, and simply tell employees which days to be in the office and which days to work from home. Don't give additional work from home privileges to mothers with children at home or anyone else. Reading Bloom's article got me really angry. It seems such an obvious instance of punishing the victim when in fact it was the system that needed fixing. Instead of making life harder for working mothers than it already is, why not change our workplaces so that people who work from home are on a level playing field for promotions with their on-site peers? Or better yet, change the rules and format of the workplace to make it easier or at least less ridiculously difficult for mothers to work in the office and care for their children too. I got on the phone with Bloom to ask him these questions. It turned out he knew a lot more about the trade-offs of work and parenthood than I did, not only because he'd done the research, but also because, unlike me, he actually is a working parent. When I made my case that companies should change to make life easier for working parents, he challenged me to come up with what those changes should be. He said that working from home really is not the equivalent of working in the office for most jobs, and especially not managerial jobs, where things like going out for coffee with colleagues and learning what goes on behind the scenes are really essential and difficult to do by Zoom. What about on-site childcare? It certainly helps, Bloom said. He and his wife used it for their toddler daughter because it was the best option they could find. But she hated being dropped off at 9 and was ecstatic to be picked up at 5. It made me nervous about putting children in for longer, he recalled. So parents who use on-site childcare may need to limit their workdays to 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., he said. For many well-paid jobs, that is not enough hours. What I learned from that conversation is what most working parents already know. Much of the time, there really is no good solution. Instead, there's an infinite variety of individual workarounds, including trade-offs and sacrifices, help from grandparents and nannies, after-school programs, part-time work, and sometimes parents, usually mothers, leaving their jobs altogether. None of it is perfect, and all of it seems unfair to at least one of the people involved. But if we don't have good answers, we can at least try to ask some good questions that might point us in the right direction. Where does the myth end and reality begin? We've all seen countless mothers who have enviable careers, smart and well-behaved children who get good grades, spotless homes, and a home-cooked meal every night. These women also have perfect figures. They obviously put in lots of time at the gym, flawless hair and makeup, and designer clothes. The problem is none of them are real. They're on TV. You know at least some of these mothers: Alicia Florrick from The Good Wife, Lorelai Gilmore from Gilmore Girls, Miranda Hobbs from Sex and the City, and Claire Huxtable from The Cosby Show. Among many, many others, it isn't always easy, but they always manage to pull it off with style. I love TV shows as much as anyone, but they often seem designed to make us feel bad about ourselves. Whatever you do doesn't look anything like what your favorite characters do, and you yourself don't look anything like they do either. This might lead you to think you just aren't trying hard enough. Believe me, you are trying hard enough. Of course, it isn't just television. We all know real people who just seem to have this stuff all sewn up. I'll never forget a visit to a couple who were friends of my husband's before we got married. She had 4 children who were all thriving, and she was slender and beautiful with a perfect haircut. She had a job as an executive. We stayed the night, and when we woke up the next morning, she greeted us with freshly baked scones that she must have started making around 5 o'clock that morning. I very much enjoyed our visit, but I did a certain amount of muttering under my breath as I compared myself to her. And that, of course, was the whole problem in one sentence. I was comparing myself to someone else. Comparing ourselves to anyone in fiction or in real life is always a recipe for trouble. We berate ourselves because we don't have as fancy a job, as beautiful a home, as accomplished children, or as fun a marriage as the people down the street. Or we congratulate ourselves because we don't feed our children fast food or let our lawn go to weeds like our neighbors. All of it is nonsense. The more we compare ourselves to others, whether that makes us feel good or bad about ourselves, the less we're living our own lives. and the harder it is for us to see what really matters. What will you choose to give up? My role model through most of my life was the Parisian author Dominique de Santi. She and my father had been childhood friends, and even though they lived in different countries, they saw each other whenever the opportunity arose. I was starry-eyed around her, the only successful author that I personally knew. She and her husband had an open marriage and kept 2 apartments, so their home life was complicated, to say the least. It wasn't something I wanted to try myself, but it didn't seem to be exactly what she wanted. Everything in her life appeared to be precisely on her own terms. I would have tea with her every now and then. On one of those last visits, I filled her in on my life since the last time we saw each other. My career was going well. I was happily married, but I didn't have everything I wanted. I was disappointed that our attempts to have a child hadn't worked out. She looked at me sternly. You never get everything, she said. It was a striking admonition coming from the one person in my life whom I thought it didn't apply. I don't know what DeSanti wished had been different in her own life, but I do know she was right. We never get everything we want, and everything we do get means giving up something else. That applies to those of us who aren't raising children, and even more to those who are. It even applies to Nicholas Bloom. When I asked him whether it was inevitable that parenthood negatively affects people's careers, his answer was surprisingly personal. I quit McKinsey, he said. I was there for a year and a half as a management consultant after my first kid was born. It was clear it was not a career I could do, plus spend time with my kids. It would be impossible. You're on the road. I'd never be around. Bloom says he's lucky. Educated at Cambridge and Oxford with a PhD from University College London, he was well positioned to enter academia. He acknowledged that his professorship at Stanford is a pretty nice fallback position. Kids may make people happy, he said. They improve mental health. I wouldn't want to try and claim that for anyone. Having kids or not having kids is a good or bad decision for their career. It's just from a personal perspective. It influenced my career. Probably I'm earning less and I'm happy, and I'll never have any regrets. Can you lose the guilt? As I was thinking about this chapter, I sent out a call asking working parents to tell me what was most difficult about combining parenting with their careers. I was astonished at how many wrote back to say that what made it most difficult was feeling guilty all the time, guilty about their kids when they were working, guilty about their work when they were spending time with their kids, guilty about neglecting their marriage or romantic relationships, and guiltiest of all, if they ever took any time to do anything just for themselves, even if it was something they needed for their physical well-being, such as a workout or a yoga class. April Critchlow is a chief marketing officer at Citral, an employee engagement and performance platform for large companies. She was formerly global head of marketing at SAP SuccessFactors, the human resource software division of the giant tech company SAP. She's also the mother of 2 children under 10. She said she often feels guilty around other parents in her community, usually mothers who don't have jobs outside the home and can turn up for PTA events, help with fundraisers, and get thoroughly involved in their children's schools. That guilt is intensified if a work trip keeps her away from a special event, such as a school performance. People tell you all the time that those years are short, she said. Then again, sometimes she compares herself to mothers at work who have full-time nannies or other help and can spend more hours on the job than she can. When you're not working, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I should be working. Is there a fix for all this guilt? Critchlow said it comes down to setting the right expectations for others and for yourself. I think that the guilt comes from the expectation that we have to be there for everything because, again, we're comparing ourselves to the parents who can be there for everything. Added to that, she said, is the old school way of thinking that you should be available for your kids all the time. A better approach, Critchlow told me, is to let others know what you can do and where you'll need help. I think a lot of moms put undue pressure on themselves to try to be fully mom all the time. If you're working outside the home, she added, I don't think it's humanly possible to do it all. I think you have to be okay with the things that you prioritize, and no one can do that but you. The chance for that kind of prioritization came up recently when Critchlow got an exciting invitation from one of the other mothers she knew in her New York City neighborhood. This other mother was an executive at the Museum of Modern Art. She invited Critchlow and some other moms she knew from the neighborhood to an evening event at the museum. Unfortunately, the event conflicted with a picnic for pre-kindergarten students and their parents at their daughter's school. Her husband was surprised that she would consider missing the picnic. He assumed her daughter's event would take precedence. Normally, I think I can't go to the museum, she said. And then I thought to myself, wait a minute, I have the right to reset the expectations of the narrative. It would be good for mom to go to the museum because I would come back relaxed and I'd have the opportunity to do something cultural and be among other moms. It meant that asking her husband to do something that she normally wouldn't have. I had to think that this is the joy of parenting together. We could carry the load together. So Critchlow asked her husband to take her daughter to the picnic, and she went off to the museum. And turned out everyone had a good time. We have to set boundaries, she said, and we have to give ourselves space to take care of ourselves. I don't know how we do that except by just doing it and breaking through the guilt and doing it and having fun and saying, I'll do that again. Psychotherapist Angela Thicken should have the answer to the guilt conundrum if anyone does. Not only does she specialize in stress reduction, but she also has a 3-year-old. When I asked about guilt, she said, is there a solution or a magic wand? If there were, I would be a billionaire. I would market that, believe me. Despite being a stress reduction expert, Viken sometimes feels guilty if she chooses to do something for herself, such as spend time with a friend or get a mani-pedi when she could be spending time with her daughter. I love spending time with my daughter, and I also want to do this thing for me, she said. One way to manage the guilt is thinking about should versus prefer. Should exists for a reason. I should do laundry or so I have clean underwear. I should go grocery shopping so I have food, but I should spend time with my daughter. What would I prefer to do? I would prefer to spend time with my girlfriend, whom I haven't seen in a few weeks, or would I prefer to play with my daughter? Well, I can play with my daughter tonight when I get home, so I actually would prefer to see my girlfriend. Thinking about it this way can soften the whole issue a little, Viken said. It doesn't have to be so bloated and saturated with guilt. There are many aspects of parenting, and one we don't always think about is modeling or teaching by example. Most children grow up using their parents as a template for how to live in the world, so that the behaviors you display as a parent, working person, and human being may be repeated by your children later on. When we say no to things that are too much for us to handle, and when we take time for ourselves, Viken said, we are modeling for our children that we can take care of ourselves and it's okay to be selfish. That doesn't have to have a negative connotation. When we donate time to ourselves, we actually increase our overall well-being so that we have more energy to be present, whether for our families, our partners, our girlfriends, or ourselves. My own parents were good role models in some ways and bad ones in others. But one thing I learned from them, because they both modeled it strongly and consistently, was that they took their work very seriously and always did their absolute best at everything they undertook to do. This led to each of them being quite successful at their very different jobs, although it also meant that both of them, my father in particular, were sometimes unavailable when I was growing up. I'm not the only one. I've changed some identifying details in the following story, but it's all true. There was a prominent journalist who was a friend of mine. This journalist traveled the world on assignment, and her stories appeared often on the front page in one of the nation's most widely read newspapers. She won many awards and accolades. However, the journalist also had a son and, my friend said, struggled with her guilt over leaving him behind when she was off on assignment. She agonized over the priorities she had chosen and how they were affecting him. The years passed and the son grew to be a musician. He put the same work ethic into writing, performing, and recording his songs that his mother put into her front page stories. On the night of the Grammy Awards, she accompanied him to the ceremony, and when his name was announced as a winner, one of the youngest ever in his category, the camera panned over to her, and the whole world could see her gigantic smile. Parenting is a marathon, not a sprint. Being a working parent can mean an ongoing struggle among priorities and constant search for least bad solutions. Our society doesn't always accommodate working parents, and our workplaces were designed for a time when one spouse was always home. Even so, you may one day look back and discover that you got it right after all. Exercises to try. Number 1, what if you just stopped feeling guilty? I realize that feeling guilty is part of being a parent and that it's not easy to turn the guilt off, but just for a moment, try to imagine what it would be like if you did. Don't imagine that you finally do everything right, but merely that you do everything the same as you did yesterday and the day before. Not all of it is fine with you. If you could reach the desirable state, that would be different. What would be different? What would stay the same? Try going just one day with no guilt. One 24-hour period when every time you think the guilty thought, you stop and say to yourself, today is no guilt day. I could feel guilty about this tomorrow. At the end of no guilt day, ask yourself how you feel and whether you like to have another no guilt day sometime soon. Number 2, choose what you will fail at. When I interviewed Oliver Burkeman, author of the book 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals, he made a suggestion that I immediately fell in love with. Choose what you will fail at because it's impossible to succeed at everything. Cooking is one of the things he says he's willing to fail at. If you're trying to balance work with parenting or with caring for a family member who needs it, there's no question. You will fail at some things. So decide in advance which things you'll fail at and then try to revel in your own failure. Thank you for joining us for this week's weekly reading. Come join us again next week. And don't forget to follow us on Mindset Monday as we discuss the chapters that we've read. We'll see you next time. Namaste.
As entrepreneurs, we have a unique opportunity to make a positive impact in the world around us. In a time when the world is shifting towards supporting local businesses and embracing community-driven initiatives, it becomes even more important for us to give where our heart leads us. At the table, we believe in the power of giving back, and that's why we have our cause of the quarter. This quarter, we are proud to support Perfect Pals, a local organization dedicated to rescuing and providing care for stray cats in our community. By supporting local causes like Perfect Pals, we not only make a difference in the lives of those in need, but we also contribute to the growth and well-being of our local community. We believe in small acts of kindness, and they can create a ripple effect of positivity, inspiring others to do the same. As we shift our focus solely from supporting large corporations to championing local businesses and giving back, we not only strengthen our community, but we also foster a sense of connection and unity. Together, we can create a thriving ecosystem. Are you tired of juggling endless tasks, Struggling to find time for what truly matters? We have the solution for you. Introducing Free Time Solutions, your ultimate partner in reclaiming your time and maximizing your potential. At Free Time Solutions, we specialize in helping businesses like yours thrive in a digital world. From social media management to website optimization and branding, we have the expertise to elevate your online presence and streamline your operations. Imagine having time to focus on what you love to do while we take care of your business. With our dedicated team of experts and innovative solutions, we leave you free to pursue your passions and achieve your goals. Whether you are a small business owner, entrepreneur, freelancer, we offer comprehensive services tailored to your needs. Our goal is simple: to give you back time, freedom to do what you do best while we handle the rest. So join us at the table and let Free Time Solution empower you to take control of your time and unlock your full potential. Visit our website at www.yourfreetimeback.com. That's www.yourfreetimeback.com to learn more and schedule your consultation today. Free Time Solutions, your partner in success. Let's make the most of your free time together. Thank you for joining us at the table. Stay tuned for weekly readings on Sunday, Mindset Monday, discussing our weekly readings on Monday, and on Friday, our interview and potentially guest host. Stay tuned.
Thank you for joining in on the fun. Be sure to like and subscribe for more.